With us today, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Karen Torrejon. Karen is founder of an academic spinout right here from Albany, which started at the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering, which is now the College of University of Albany. But Karen built a team. She found a CEO. She grew her company all around the field of glaucoma detection. And so Karen's going to join in our discussion today throughout the hour. And then at the end, we're going to have some one-on-one with Karen and allow you to ask some questions to her as well. So thanks for being with us, Karen.
Thanks, Kelly. Nice to be here.
All right, so what are we going to discuss today? We're going to discuss how to prepare for this mindset shift. We're going from grants to revenue, and that's very different for researchers like yourself. We're also going to discuss how your existing grants can help you. We want to identify actionable first steps for you to walk away with today to be able to find your sellable offering. And ultimately, we want to be able to prepare you for any barriers you may come up against during this transition period going from grants to revenue. So for a bit of historical context, I'm just going to start by referencing Dr. Keshavadis's recent editorial published in the Times Union, where he went through and discussed really how the federal grant system was designed. It was designed to originally, after World War II, to be an outsource of the federal government's R&D needs. They couldn't do it all themselves. It was too expensive to do themselves. So they really brought this government, academic, industry collaboration together. And academic partners were going to develop the science and technology that the government needed for their useful applications within government and within industry. And ultimately, as this was happening, the government saw the value in this model and went on to develop the Small Business Grants Program as well, which helps commercialize some of these incredible inventions that were coming out of this funding. So let's weigh in on some of the pros and cons. Grants are wonderful. Grants are tools for testing feasibility and development of inventions that you're finding and developing in your labs and your centers. And all of these great funding agencies that you're working with and the programs that they're developing, they're funding billions of American R&D dollars, and they're keeping us really at the top of the world's innovation culture. But there comes a time when researchers really run a risk of grant dependency. And what I mean by that is chasing R&D dollars without market signals. And by market signals, I mean validation from the market that they actually need and desire what it is you're developing in your research. So the NSF actually built a whole program around teaching researchers how to test and market their innovations and their research. So they were trying to help you as researchers validate the need for what it is you are working on. They didn't want people getting to the end of all these millions and billions of dollars of research funding and realize there really wasn't a commercial application. So they, as I said, built this program around it called Innovation Corps or I-Corps. That's also one of the programs I run at UAlbany. The government funds this program because they want you as researchers to be able to be sustainable. They need you to be sustainable and not completely basic funding projects. They want you to be able to sustain your needs and desires. So what I'd like to acknowledge today, as I kind of have already, is that the majority of you in the audience today are researchers, and you have had much success in winning grants. So I'm not talking today poorly about grants. We know that they are a fantastic tool. And 2025 has shown to us that it can be a little bit unpredictable, but valuable for what they offer and allow you to accomplish pre-revenue. So grant funding may have developed the foundation of your research. It helped gain credibility in your field. It allowed you to gain metrics to help support your theories. Grants may have even helped you purchase your infrastructure and equipment to be able to make your research possible. So those are all wonderful things that grants have afforded you. What I really want to highlight today is that those same achievements can help you gain even more monetary stability by doubling as the foundation of not only your research efforts, but as the foundation of your startup company. So if you haven't considered commercialization to date, 2025 is really a great time to give it a shot and a perfect year to venture out and try this option of commercial ability. So if you ask any of the researchers that I've worked with, it really is a mind shift change to go from traditional basic research to commercializable research and to start thinking entrepreneurially about your research. And I think Dr. Torrejon will share that she was feeling some of the same things, even though she went from her PhD directly into this commercial startup. So what we wanted to be able to bring to you today, Karen and I, is to find some of those first revenue paths, some examples of companies that have done it, as well as Karen's company, and really find out what are some of those ways that you can walk away with today and start focusing on. So let's talk about how early stage companies really often get to first revenues with pilots. Pilots or early stage testing, it can be paid ideally, or second best is unpaid trials or pilots. So what is a pilot? A pilot really offers the potential customers a limited yet risk-free experience with your product or service before it becomes commercially available. And what are you getting in exchange? You're getting their feedback, which is fantastic data, and also the potential conversion of moving them from partners or early stage interests individuals to paying customers.
And
So
Kelly, I'd like to add to that
great.
that I can bet if most of the people here are researchers, you have already done some of this, or maybe you didn't realize because you're collaborating with other folks in other fields or in your field. That also counts as as an unpaid trial or a pilot trial because you're collaborating with them using your science, your technology already. And what the result or the product for that would be your benefit, I guess, is that you end up writing a paper. And at the end of the day, that paper is also getting your technology out there. So also thinking of those collaborations and those I guess also, perhaps even unpaid trials because they include those collaborations that you're having are also going to have a product of a paper or a patent or a presentation, and that still counts as a pilot because someone else, your collaborator, it still saw the importance of your work or your technology to be able to utilize it to do XYZ studies and publish it. So that still counts as that. So I think that's a mindset that a lot of from the researcher side, we have to also keep in mind. You are already, getting your foot into that door without even realizing, just thinking of those collaborations also as pilots as well.
That's very true. And often those individuals that you could be partnering with or engaging in those early days are those who are going to accept some of the imperfections of your early iterations because they really want and value what it is you're producing. So accepting those imperfections, those are early adopters. That's what we call in business early adopters. And those individuals you want to really value. We'll talk a little bit how you can value them in multiple ways, but what's another way that we can get first revenues? Well, CROs and service contracts are very common for startups to offer to be able to pay the bills in the early days. So ultimately, you are providing consulting through the CRO model to leverage your expertise, your team's expertise, but also to establish those relationships, the relationships of finding those early adopters. And you can certainly produce sales, right? So that is ultimately your goal. You're trying to get your offering to a stage where it is sellable. But we want you to start thinking about how you could get your product, maybe a smaller version of your product out the door sooner, to be able to gain market traction, to get that customer feedback. It might not be originally what you thought you were going to go to market with, your complete product or your complete software offering, but it may be a piece of it that is good enough to get started. So the question is, can you really market a piece of that while you continue to build your final product? Many, many companies do this. And licensing and tech transfer are definitely another way to think about first revenues as you're building your final products. There are other individuals out there who may value some of the IP that you are currently working with, or IP that you've developed that you aren't currently using in your business. Do you have IP that in your portfolio that you could license? Could you offer non-exclusive rights to produce a stream of recurring revenue for yourself and your company? This could require some funding on your part, but is definitely an option. And Karen, I know you told me a little bit about a one way that you use this strategy.
Yes, so actually, a lot of times when you're publishing the papers, there your technology is highlighted there. You're going to get other scientists or companies contact you asking about, the technology, and you might gauge their interest, right? There might be the option, like Kelly said, licensing the technology itself, for which SUNY would have to get involved as well. But also there is the possibility of working a more creative type of licensing or kind of contract. And that's a way to, for example, you can work with another company that would sell your technology or your services, and on their own. They could put it on their product list, and then it's almost like a third party, and you just get a percentage of that sale, for example. So it's a very creative way of thinking and getting some revenue without you necessarily being involved. Of course, SUNY would have to get involved on this, but also that's a very easy way to get money coming in from a lot of those patents that you may have. And it's there are very creative ways. I remember some companies doing a percentage, right? Let's say we end up placing your product or your technology as a service in our website, and also in our pitch deck, or on our sales deck, and someone is interested. So then if that contract goes through, there might be several steps, and you get essentially a percentage of that contract paid, in this case would be to SUNY and to the authors or through the company. So that's actually, there is very creative ways to work around this. Of course, lawyers would have to get involved in this because there is always a little bit of a complexity on the language. But do not discard, this non-typical or more creative ways of using already IP that you may have. So, and this is why I think we welcome you to have the discussions with Kelly, your entrepreneur in residence, because you don't know if some of those technologies or IP that you're sitting on might be able to be commercialized. So we want to make sure that we're also helping you do looking at these other creative ways to utilize your IP as well. So it's
Yeah,
interesting because I did not know about this way of doing this type of transactions at all. But it was very interesting because it was a very easy, well, aside from dealing with the lawyers, a very easy way, passive way to get some revenue and money out of the IP that you have and technology that you are developing.
yeah, and I love that you're also sharing that you don't have to do all of this yourself. You can, some of what you're describing was partner to be able to leverage some of the existing channels and expertise that others already have. Often building the technology is not the hardest part of what you're doing in your startup. Building some of the infrastructure is just as difficult. So if you can piggyback on something that someone else has already created the infrastructure of while you build your own, that could get you to market sooner. So I wanted to share a couple examples of companies that were able to do this creatively, as Karen mentioned. So this company, A Clarity, took what you might call a traditional route of SBIR funding that we're all familiar with to get to the pilot stage of development. Their target customers were municipalities and private utility companies. But how did they win them over? They actually showed them that their value was already existing. They didn't wait until after their pilot to put a pricing on their offering. They priced their pilot up front. and didn't offer it for free. And so that kind of highlights the fact that perception really matters when you're seeking to create value with early stage customers. So just as a reminder, don't undervalue what it is you're creating. Creating a paid pilot can be difficult, but it is possible. And it does show your audience and your target market that you are valuable from the start. Another company that I wanted to highlight was Clearforms or ClearGrows. And this is really highlighting a different avenue to first revenue where they use private foundation funding. And private foundation funding is often overlooked. But this particular example demonstrates how grant pilots with public sectors can turn to scalable revenue. So the public sector customers sometimes can get a bad rap. Those of us who have worked with government departments or other agencies, some of them have archaic processes that can cause slow decision making, but ultimately Clearforms made it work and they learned what their customers really found and what they wanted. And what they wanted was a usage-based subscription. That was more palatable to this particular target market. So how did Clearforms figure that out? How did they know that? Well, they talked to them through what we call customer discovery. They asked the questions. What was going to make this customer segment comfortable with making that first purchase? So here's a biotech example that comes a little bit closer to Karen's experience. And this deep tech company was supported by NIH funding, like many biotech companies are. They discovered that they could provide early value to customers with clinical trial kits if they could partner with a medical device distributor. So ultimately, they lined their grant milestones up with the need to reach their first revenue stream offering. So they knew what the partner and the customer wanted by talking to them and asking questions, and they were able to use that funding to be able to get those trial kits out before they offered their complete offering. So some companies actually find themselves at a crossroads between technology and science, especially with the onset of AI in the last few years. This company, Vibe Bio, they needed revenue to extend their runway throughout the raising of their capital. They needed to develop their internal pipeline and they needed to build partnerships with biotech and pharma. So their lead asset wasn't going to be ready for 18 to 24 months. They weren't going to be able to reach that IND enabling study, that final stage before preclinical studies where they needed to be. So they said, how can we offer something a little bit earlier? And they ended up offering contract research services using their proprietary discovery engine, which allowed them and enabled them to help rare disease foundations, small biotech companies, academic labs became those early customers of their CRO. And CROs are often a really common first revenue stream for pharma tech companies, as well as this company, which was a SaaS startup. In their case, each project ranged between $25,000 and $100,000, depending on the scope. And so ultimately, they were able to generate six figures in service revenue in their first year, which using those contracts, they were able to build credibility and data and converted two clients in the making. So it just shows that getting through using a different pathway, it gave them what they needed, not only to get first customers, but also to get supporting evidence to write and achieve an SBIR and attract VC funding. The VCs are looking for traction, and if you can't show that, you have some work to do. So showing the traction through those early stage interest customers and clients that you can convert is super important for you. So why this example really stood out to me was because it really shows how deep tech SaaS can use grant-funded science to land that high-value B2B contract. And even this company, they didn't let the early revenues distract them. They scoped their work really to align with their long-term goals. So it was really a win-win. So what does this look like for your company, for your research? If you're at the stage of thinking about first revenues, you'll hopefully have done some preliminary customer discovery, reaching out and finding out if the market really has the problem you think that they have. I really can't stress how valuable this step is and is often overlooked by many early stage companies. Understanding how your customer behaves, what makes them purchase things. These are all little nuggets of knowledge that you need to understand and you get going through this customer discovery process. So you may have even mapped some of your customer personas if you have gone through a program like iCore, and that helps you better understand their behaviors and understand your buyer inside and out, so that really the point, if you remember, of customer discovery is not only to find a repeatable and scalable business model, but it's also for you as a startup founder to be able to define what your MVP is going to look like, what is going to be an acceptable version of your offering that your customer segment is going to want and that you could ultimately launch with. So as you start to hone in on these offerings that the first customers will buy, you've really already validated the desire for the solution. So your customer discovery line of questioning changes a little bit. And now you're seeking out what that first offering could look like. What do you need to get your tech or your science to? What milestone before you can secure that sale? And so you're identifying the needs versus the wants, the must-have functions versus the nice-to-have features that might be able to wait for a version 2. And ultimately, this data that you're getting through these conversations is it's really defining what you're going to be able to bring to market first. Oops, sorry. So really, now that you're seeking that first offering, you need to be able to have a real good understanding to be able to secure that sale. And there comes a time really when you get to the fun part. And I think the fun part is when you get to the pricing strategy and identifying those early adopters. And so the customers that you've been working with we talked about as being defined as early adopters, they're valuing what you're offering even before you get to your final solution, your final polished end product. Those people really are the people that you're going to want to value and offer an incentive at first. If you were listening really well to them, you heard exactly what they were looking for and what they could wait on. And that information should be valuable to you enough so that you could offer them, say, some smart pricing as you put out that version 1. You're looking for those ones, as I mentioned, that will accept those bumps and hiccups in your early stage pilot studies or V1s. They're going to stick with you throughout, and those are really going to be your biggest champions as you move through. So keep them at the top of your priority list and really treat them well, because they are offering you something that you can't get at that early stage without them, and that's that early stage validation data. You're ultimately trying to get to the shift in the conversation with them from talking about what's needed or what they're interested in to really what's it going to take to make them the first buyer, a real buyer. So test their willingness to buy and request a letter of interest from them. A letter of interest is not a binding sale, but it's an identifier. It's a marker that you're on the right pathway. And ultimately, it can lead you to converting to a sale. So this tool is a tool that we use in the iCore program called the Business Model Canvas, if you're not familiar with it. It's used to really identify where all of the unknowns lie in your business at the very early stages. And it helps you really move through methodically to test and validate or invalidate some of the hypotheses you have. But even if you follow step by step a plan of action, customers are not necessarily going to be knocking down your door. So what's your plan to fill your sales funnel? How will you identify those high need early adopters if you haven't started working with them through, say, pilot studies or partnerships within your research? So the business model canvas really does address multiple questions here, but specifically what I'm going to talk about today is how it gets you to think about how you're going to get those early stage people into your sales funnel. So what does that sales funnel, that customer acquisition strategy really look like for you as an early stage company? So let's take a look at the sales funnel. This diagram is a little busy, but it's meant to show you really the thought process of your customers at the moment that you start to engage them, all the way through the moment that they are buying your product, and then beyond that. So I want to focus on the left-hand side for now and what we call the get strategy. How are you going to get them in, raise awareness to get them into your funnel, create the demand, pique their interest, engage them as a prospect into considering making a purchase with you? So flipped on the side here for a little better reading. In a startup, you have to wear many hats. So this funnel is something you're going to become very familiar with. Yes, you might be the CTO who's developed the invention or the technology that's behind this company, but you may also be required to start thinking about some of these creative strategies and campaigns that are going to attract the customers in for your first revenues. So knowing the basics of this is really imperative as a founder. There are two types of demand creation that I'm sharing here today. There's paid, where you can pay for the awareness of your customers, or there's earn, where you can earn the awareness. So your job really is to lay out the plan that's going to work best for your company. Choose the activities ultimately that are going to bring them into your sales funnel. And how do you know what those activities are? You've talked to those people already through customer discovery. You've asked them where they learn about new technologies, where they learn about their new science inventions. And so you have a strategy through the customer discovery you've done. And so the larger the number of people that you reach out to, the larger that you're going to have coming out the bottom of your funnel. Now, not everyone's going to come out. As you reach out to customers, it's really understood that not all of them are going to have an interest. Some of them are going to have other solutions that they like better and they don't want to change. Some are not going to recognize the problem yet that you think that they have. And even those that indicate interest with you, some will get distracted or guided away to another solution. So as you can see, it gets smaller and smaller. But if you start with a larger quantity at the top, you're going to find a good portion of those coming out the bottom. So although not everyone is going to come out that bottom, they are going to result in, your efforts will result into customers coming into your funnel. So think about that last large purchase that you made. Put yourself in the customer's shoes. How did you become aware of it? What kept your interest in wanting to buy this purchase that you made? What considerations did you have? Did you do research on those? Where did you do the research? Did you evaluate it? What kept you intrigued? Think about what the company that you purchased that product from, what they did in this application of this sales funnel where you happen to be the customer.
Kelly, I'd just like to add something. I'm sorry, because
Please.
this also reminds me, for a lot of us who come from academia, from a lot of the times we don't realize, but we can get to do a lot of these exercises, getting to know all these folks from the conferences that we're going at, from the meetings that we're going. So, and I think that's something important to keep in mind. Everyone that you're talking to at those conferences can be a potential client, can be a potential uh, person who you would be interviewing without them even realizing. But you have to keep that mindset and your ears open, right? Because you want to listen and learn as much as you can. And so take advantage of that. I think that's the big advantage for coming from academia, right? That we're already building those early adopters and getting to learn from the cutting edge technologies that are being, developed, and then which ones are they actually going to make it, which ones are people willing to pay for. So and just be talking to people while you're at these meetings. I think it's very important to keep in mind that sometimes we forget.
That's super important. Keeping your technology, close to your vest and not talking about it is not going to be able to help you find those early interests. interested parties. It's not going to help you be able to land those partnerships. You have to be able to talk about what it is you're creating without giving away your intellectual property, right? And I just want to point out lastly on this slide, this little magic arrow here on the left is called the viral loop. Now, while not every company is going to be able to create a viral loops are great. You don't have to spend money on them, because what happens is your early customers are finding your offering so exciting that they're talking about it, and they're becoming your sales force for you, sometimes without you even knowing it. If you might have someone in your life who is one of these viral early adopters of technologies, where they just can't wait to tell you about the latest thing that they purchased. And really, those people can be really huge cost savers for you. And just to address those with digital offerings, this early part of the left-hand side of the sales funnel, the get for digital solutions, might be a little bit different than physical solutions, because what it does is splits it into two sections, really the acquiring and then the activation of those customers. So it's a two-part strategy. It might be like a click and a sign up, or a visit and a scheduling of a demo. Acquiring and activating ultimately to find that yield for each activity that you're testing. So just a few examples of the paid demand generation. It is ultimately depending on your budget, you're going to be able to offer some of these for cost, low cost, mid cost, but all of these activities are really designed to feed the sales funnel to bring the customers in. So as you're looking at your budget, what can you afford at this point? You might have to choose 2 or more of these to get going, but these are just examples of methods that you can use to get people into that funnel. And then there's the earned demand creation. So there's ways to spend no or small amounts of money. As an academic, as Karen has been mentioning, you can leverage that grant network that you have, convert those existing PIs and collaborators and reviewers to be potential customers if they are your market. And it's really important to ask, when you look at these, are these actually free? And I know many of you have gone to conferences before, so if you see conferences listed on here, you really do have to say, is it a free offering? Because conferences cost money to get to unless you're being paid to show up there. So make sure that you're asking yourself, what does it really cost to publish a paper? What does it really cost to get to a conference? They may actually end up in the other category of paid demand creation. But ultimately, you're trying to figure out what's it going to take to get your customers' attention. So closing out here, even if done perfectly, the federal SBIR funding is really designed to get you from discovery through some of the early pilot stages to a first customer. That could even be the federal government itself. But what really goes perfect these days? Not too much. So the traction process that I just described really takes time, and it may take up to 12 months or so after you've concluded a grant to be able to get that traction process started. Your team has to start thinking now about what it is that's out there that you could use. What strategy are you going to take to be able to carry you through those next 12 months after that grant ends? And some options really are friends and family round of funding. Angels are out there. There's also pre-seed investors who will look at companies who have yet to create revenue. But I want to focus on one that I mentioned earlier, which is often overlooked, which is foundations. So if you think about foundations, if you're operating in an underserved market, if you align with public health goals, if you are creating global development, foundations are built around topics like these, and they really are looking to be able to help companies like yours meet that commercialization adjacent milestone, is how we like to phrase it. And those really are ways to be able to impact both your bottom line and your trajectory to get to market. While what's in it for them, they're going to be able to generate social value. You can help them generate that social value. And so what is it that they're valuing? You have to ask, right? You have to understand the foundation. But what's in it for you, you're going to be able to get that funded development from them, the foundation, and get that real data, that usability study, those testimonials, all while building that larger, full product that you want to bring to market.
And I think you also get some visibility, actually quite a bit of visibility, because usually foundations, at conferences related to your field, they usually, blast all of the technologies or that they have funded. So it actually makes it a very nice way to market the technology. Also, a lot less people apply to foundations compared to, government grants. So there is a greater chance for you to get that as well. So I actually do like foundations quite a bit. I've seen, at least in my field, that they have become very a great tool, as you said, to bridge that gap, I guess, between or that jump between grant to actual, fully relying on revenue.
Right. If you can find that alignment, this is definitely a win-win option.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the part where we really want to tap into Karen. So I'm going to stop sharing here and ask Karen a few questions. But as Nancy mentioned earlier, we do have the Q&A section open on this webinar. So if you have questions, please drop them in and we will get to them. But I'll start off with a question, Karen, and ask you, when you first began, you were developing microphysiological systems that can detect changes in intraocular pressure,
Mhm.
ultimately leading to the treatable cause of vision loss or glaucoma. So what did you envision as your first product service offering to be, and what did it ultimately end up being?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we thought we were going to be selling a kit and that it was going to be, like clinicians or scientists could just buy this kit, and we ended up actually selling a service that ended up turning out to be multiple, not just technology based, but then also just essay developments for our clients because we became experts in that. So ultimately, we ended up selling our service based on the technology and also existing technologies as well. And then as opposed to a kit, which is what we thought we were going to be selling to begin with.
And did you ultimately get to the kit, or was the pivot a significant pivot? You stayed with the service rendering.
We did not get to the kit, but we can. We did do some studies where we proved that we can do it. So if there is the right, and we've had clients wanting to know if they want a kit, especially academia would like kits because it would be easier for them, or so they think, because I think there is also some downside to it. But, it's something that we can certainly do. We tested it. We've proven that we can. So there is that option. But interestingly, that has not really, we haven't really sold a kit yet. So we just wanted to make sure that we had that and we can add that as a potential commercial offering, right? But we haven't sold one yet.
Okay, that's great. Knowing your market and what your market needs and when they need it is crucial. So I know you mentioned before that mindset shift was really something significant for you. So can you share how did you do that mindset shift and which hat to wear when?
Yeah, I think it's a constant putting one hat, wearing the other one, putting one hat, wearing the other one. And I think it takes a lot of just reminding yourself, right, that what you're doing, and that you take all the opportunities that you have, like I said earlier, to go ahead and even as you're having meetings or conversations with a friend who happens to be, in the industry, I think that ends up, like you said, going a long way. So we had to, in my case particularly, I had to, I started with, just trying to learn as much as I could from what everybody I was talking to in the field. I was very honest, right? I'm not sure necessarily if this would be something that people would want, right? I just want to learn. I want to understand what the industry really needs. Would you pay for something like this? So a lot of active listening, and just presenting our technology in the conferences, for example. And then, you have a lot of science involved there, but at the same time, then you get those few conversations or more than a few, that talk about, what are the pain points? And so you start taking notes on that. And then you think about, can your technology, fill that gap? So I think it's a constant, once you decide that you are going to go into the commercialization, right, entrepreneurial route, you have to have that mindset change and remind yourself constantly, yes, I'm in academia. Yes, I'm here, for this grant, but at the same time, I'm also want to start thinking about, is this a potential business? I want to keep thinking of that. So it's a constant putting one hat, wearing the other one. So I mean, honestly, I think that's what you have to do. So take every opportunity that you can, to learn.
Yeah, and in your case, you had the technological expertise and skill set to be the CTO of your company right from the start, but you realized that someone had to be the CEO. So you had to wear that hat for a while, right?
Yes, yes. And it was, and I can tell you all the horror stories as well because we kept thinking, we kept looking constantly. We need to have a CEO. We need to have a CEO. We need to have a CEO because I can't do both of them. And also my background again comes from academia, as you mentioned, going straight from your PhD into entrepreneurship, into a startup. You don't come with all the knowledge, in the business side. But I took classes like the ones that you guys have, that you offer, and that made a big difference. Nonetheless, we were constantly still looking for a CEO, and we had, I think, about 3 or 4 interim CEOs, and it just didn't turn out good. I think at the end of the day, what I ended up learning is that unless you understand the technology and you are a champion for the technology, there's no point of you spending a lot of money to get a new CEO. So I think, we kept thinking, okay, this person has the title, they have the experience, they look great on paper. But then when they're coming the time to get money, right? They might not be able to do it as enthusiastically as you would. Also, usually because at the beginning you cannot pay a CEO salary, you may start paying them, very little money or just in options. So just sometimes the can't have the word in the tip of my tongue, but essentially there's no as much incentive for them to go and push and be truly a champion. So that was one of the issues that we saw. But we learned this after 3 or 4 iterations of, this, but now I know. So now I can advise you guys on, what you can or cannot do. But it's something that we were constantly looking for a CEO because I didn't have that background. But I think you can learn it. That's something that, as long as you're not afraid to understand that you don't know everything from the business side, and then that you are willing to learn and use the tools and folks around you that do have the experience and expertise. I think you will do okay. Depending on the size also of the company and what stage they're at.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And not being afraid of jumping in that position for the interim until you could find someone that works, that risk tolerance that entrepreneurs have, you certainly are exhibiting and have shown that you have that. If we don't have any questions coming in yet, I do have one or two more. Tell us about, you talked about finding individuals at conferences, and I think you mentioned you found your first customer at a conference. How did that turn out?
Yeah, that's correct. So, we had interest, from just our papers, originally from a large, pharmaceutical company, but it really didn't turn out to be a client, right? So next time we went to a conference, we were, trying to, not follow, but trying to cross path with some of these clients that were working in the glaucoma side, right? So we were trying to, you do a little bit of background, a research, understand who they are. So when they come to your poster or to your presentation, or you have a chance to have a conversation or an intro, you know who they are, and you're starting talking to them and establish that relationship to begin with. And so we did. We started talking to a company that was working in the glaucoma space, that it was a perfect fit for us. We showed them the data, invited them to our presentation. They came to this was, I think, a podium presentation. They came and it was great because we actually had two KOLs arguing. Well, I was just there. I was just standing there. This one guy said, "Oh, you're showing this. This is wrong." And then the other one guy said, "Are you really going to let him tell you that you're wrong? Because he is wrong." So it was great. It was great. So it just kind of worked out. It was a very scary moment because like two of these big name people that you've always, especially right coming from my side, being younger, at that moment it was like, oh no, like these two people that I look up to are now like arguing over this. But it was great because that also added credibility to the technology, that there was a big interest. And at the end of the day, the guy that said that I was wrong was doing the math wrong by like a tenfold. So yeah, it was very embarrassing after. And he ended up talking to me later and apologizing and like became a big champion for our technology. And so I think that, and then so having that presentation and having those questions, made other potential clients see that there was interest, right? So we had those conversations. Later, they asked some questions. Have you tested this type of drugs, or have you tested this and that? And then we started those conversations. And later they said, would you be willing to try our compound and see how it works? And we said, sure. And of course, we charged them very low. Now, I mean, we would not be charging that much money now. Like it was very little money. And of course, they took that and more and more. And we should have known then that we were charging them very little. But hey, this was one of our very first client. And so that's how we ended up getting to work with them. And it was a great experience because this company we started working with them early on and they became the first in-class glaucoma drug. So the fact that we worked with the company that, became so big later, it was great for us. So we kind of hit the perfect storm on that with that. And we learned a lot. Those first clients, we learned how demanding it can be. We had their director for research and development calling me all sorts of times of the hour to trying to find out the data. And so it was a learning process, right? And then you started also, what are your limits, right? You want to make sure that you delineate those. So there is a whole other it's all a learning process. So, but it was great. It was great because once you learn all that, what you have to say or do or not do for the next one. So, yeah.
You've had so much experience in such a short period of time with such great stories. I love this. And if any of you are curious, we've brought Karen on as an entrepreneur in residence for our UAlbany Innovation Center Incubator Program. So this experience is going to be able to help more companies and new companies coming out of UAlbany and the community who want to be able to learn from individuals like Karen. So just to wrap up today, I'm going to ask you one more thing, Karen, and what advice would you offer others in the same position as you who come in with the technical knowledge and really need to take on all responsibilities?
I think two things that are big. One, just do it. And I don't want to get in trouble with Nike, but just do it. Really. Just go ahead and take that leap of faith in a way, go and do it. But if you do decide to do it, make sure that you understand what are your limitations, what you don't know, and just look for people that do know or that can help you so then you can maximize the time that all the experience that you're getting, instead of just you doing it yourself. And I think that was something that was very helpful for us. Our team was comprised of we had a lawyer, we had someone who had been in the uh pharmaceutical industry for like many years, and service industry. So that actually helped with my technical background kind of build a good team that helped us move forward. I think if I didn't have a team like that to begin with, had a very hard time really moving forward. So create a good team, know what you don't know, get the right people around you that can help you, and just be willing to have a fun ride, because it's really going to be it's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but there is also a lot of rewarding and a lot of learning and that's something that I thought, right? What's going to be the difference if I go and just find a regular job and continue doing, what I'm doing, compared to someone who's doing what I ended up doing, a startup? And I think that was the experience that I'm getting. No one else would be able to say that they were able to get if I didn't do that. So no matter what happens, whether your technology fails or not, right? And hopefully it doesn't, because we're here to help you. But the idea is I'm still learning, right? This experience is still gonna mean something. So I think I think that's more than just two that I said. It's more like three or four. So, but there you go.
You're very humble, Karen. We thank you for coming and sharing your time with us and becoming one of our entrepreneurs in residence and paying it forward, helping some more companies be as successful. So
Great to be here.
thank you, and I'll pass it back to Nancy. Okay, just to close this out, the program I talked about today, all throughout the customer discovery I mentioned, really does stem through the National Science Foundation I-Corps program. UAlbany does run one of their own. This is a training that involves hands-on experience and potential for funding of your team and your research. So if you're interested in something like this, if you want to take a chance, our program is a few weeks long. It allows you to really see if that market need is out there. And there are multiple cohorts that run all throughout the year and at other schools. So if our schedule doesn't match up with yours, I can certainly refer you to another school so you can have the experience virtually through another university's program. So with that, I will say thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next Lunch and Learn.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.